Hi, I'm Chris. I like to paint things, and today I want to introduce you to a game called Steel Rift. Steel Rift is a miniature skirmish game of giant mech stompy combat by Death Ray Designs. This is not a sponsored video or anything, I just think these sculpts are awesome, especially the mechs in the background of this shot. They are super, super nice, and they released a new starter set, and I think more people should know about it because it's only like $45. I mean, some of these kits are phenomenal. The thing I have my eye on next is these Cerberus gunslingers. Again, not sponsored, I promise. I just want to call attention to how cool these are. Quick build 2-player starter set comes with 6 mechs for $45. You could literally play it in like 10 minutes out of the box. But that's not what I bought. No, I had to be silly and I bought like a one of everything. I wanted to try one mech from like each of the factions. These kits are super, super nice. I mean, it's really, really nice resin. I put them together kind of off camera. They come in only like a couple pieces. I didn't think it was necessary. Now, I'm weird, okay? I'm not going to play Steel Rift. I'm actually going to play Bangarang with these. Now, one of the rules of Bangarang is that you got to build the mechs, and I'm not going to build these, that's true, but I'm going to use them to introduce some of my friends into like tabletop skirmish gaming, so I think we can all agree. And I made these little cards, so get over it. Why am I doing Bangarang? I don't like rules. That's all right. So today, we're going to turn these 4 blister packs into these awesome mechs. And I'm going to show you some tips along the way on how to get really cool mechs. So after assembly and priming, the biggest, most important first step is going to be base coats. I'm going to show you a few good techniques for base coats. Now I did magnetize all these mechs and spent a long time doing that. And I didn't do it perfectly every time, but that's okay. Magnetizing's fun until it's not. So this technique I used on all of my Gaslands cars. I recommend watching that video. It's probably one of my more, one of the videos I'm more proud of in my small YouTube career. The biggest thing you're going to do is do a solid base coat and then dry brush layering. We all know dry brush layering. I've even made a YouTube short about dry brush layering, but I do this in like a lot of small incremental steps. So we do the darkest color, our darkest base coat is going to be a full, honestly pretty thin, but solid level of color, base coat. You know what I'm saying. This is important to do correctly because you need to get it to cover pretty much everything you know that's going to be green or blue or whatever, but you really, really need to let it dry because if you try and dry brush over this, you're going to have a bad time. So dry brushing, I just use cheap makeup brushes, man. They're like $1, $2 at the, the store. You can get them in most countries. I'm sure you have some version of makeup brushes that'll do the job. And then we mix our base coat with a slightly lighter color and just do really, really light dry brushes, boosting that color, going up a little bit in value, but very, very slowly. Then after you get a good level, you want to do circular motions on armor panels. Now I'm waving my hands that you can't see on camera, circular, because this kind of helps get you that airbrushed effect. One thing I do recommend that I didn't do a super great job of in this example is get like a little bit of water on your makeup brushes too to reduce some of that chalkiness. You won't see that chalkiness later. The reason we go circular and we keep... one second. Whatever. The reason we go circular is we want like an airbrush look on mech panels because mechs sing when you get each panel to have its own levels of value from, bright to dark. And I'm realizing now I'm probably going to be removing some of that value with my oily man hands. Anyway, I did a really, really, really nice dry brush on the front cockpit of this, which is exactly why later I'm going to cover it up with metallics. But once you get to like your brightest colors, you're doing soft, extreme passes. You really don't even want to be leaving anything behind. By the time, on one swipe. It should take you like 3 swipes to see something. Now after that, I kind of blocked in some of the other colors and you can really see what I'm talking about here. All the other panels are just solid. If you get like the underskeleton of the mech with like dark colors, that sort of thing. Really, really makes those panels sing when you get those values on each panel separate, like I said. Then we're going to do a unifying wash over a gloss varnish. This is my recipe for what people call marine juice or sonic sledgehammer juice. Sledge wash? I don't know. But you essentially mix two washes in a medium. And I like to do it over a gloss varnish for something with flat panels like a mech, because it'll seal in everything and it'll help that wash really run into the crevices. I do a heavy wash, and then I come back in with a just wet brush with no paint on it and like work that paint around. I'm still gonna leave a little bit of tide marks, you'll see them. On a mech, when you're gonna do weathering, it's not the end of the world, but if you're going for a clean look, you probably wanna do panel lining instead. I can cover panel lining, but I'd have to buy some towel, and I don't have any towel yet. You wanna send me some towel? Send me some towel, I'll do panel lining. And then we let that bad boy dry. Whew, look at that, man. Unifying wash covers up the gloss varnish. I did ruin the cockpit on that, and I'll never fully recover it, but that's something I have to live with and you don't. You can really see the difference in the arms that are just base coated versus the values and the shading and highlighting we've done with just a dry brush on the rest of the mech. Now, coming off some tips from one of my most viewed videos to one of my all-time least viewed videos, decals and hazard stripes. These were the hazard stripes I put on my Gene Stealer Cult bases. They're not the greatest, but they are very important for what I'm gonna demonstrate here. I'm doing a tutorial video, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that. That's not something I normally do. I'm not even the world's greatest painter, but I think you need to know how I do it. I don't know what I'm doing here, actually. I'm just showcasing that they're magnetic. Painting, little magnets is a pain in the cojones. What am I saying? We're doing decals. So we're going to do decals. We're going to do hazard stripes, small things. So if you saw in the last mech, we used little decals and really tiny transfers. On this, we're going to do hazard stripes to sell scale. Easiest way to paint yellow is to get a nice tan or light brown base coat. That way you can paint yellow over it easily. I'm using Cyber Yellow. It's a very green yellow, which kind of conflicts with the wash I'll do later, but it's a very nice yellow, and it's probably the boldest yellow I have in my collection. This is usually a two thin coats kind of thing, even over these light base coats. Theoretically, probably could have done white too, but I don't know. I like to have, we're going for contrast and levels, baby. What do you want? So after these are fully painted yellow, we're gonna have to figure out how hazard stripes work on little guns. On little guns, man, you might want to switch to decals. Also, make sure you change your paint water. Don't drink that. It's not an energy drink. The camera is honestly struggling to pick up how vibrant this Cyber Yellow is. Would recommend Cyber Yellow from Green Stuff World if you want a green Cyber Yellow. I even took the liberty of doing a full panel on this bad boy. Now, there's a few ways to do hazard stripes. I'm gonna fail at a couple of them and succeed at a few others. So a lot of people like to use a Sharpie or a pencil, something small that you're actually used to writing with, because a paintbrush can be kind of tricky. In hindsight, I think I personally would have succeeded using a very tiny paintbrush to do this, because it's something I'm more comfortable with. But if you're not, and honestly, remember, hazard stripes don't need to be perfect. You can weather them later. If you're not, try something you are comfortable with, like a pen. Just remember, markers like these, they're not going to stain or sit super well on, a plastic miniature. And I did have to do a lot of this work off camera because I'm just not that good. Also, these fine tip Sharpies don't color in very well. So I recommend using them to get your lines kind of roughed, and then take a matte black. Army Painter matte black is always great. Or even a dark blue, almost black color to fill in the gaps. Again, a lot of this work, unfortunately, on camera, this is tricky. These are tiny. I mean, these things are, they're smaller than, I don't have anything for reference. I have no banana for scale. I have regular sized hands. How's that sound? They're very tiny. And drawing little lines very tiny, not so easy. That's why I also did this guy's leg panel, because I thought, one, he looks like a construction robot, like a little Constructicon dude, kind of cool. And I thought it would just add some contrast and, an extra bit of detail to this guy. A really good thing to do over yellow to add shading easily is do a sepia tone rather than shading with Nuln Oil or something dark. It just makes a really rich yellow, and if you are careful and do this well, it can pull at the bottom and create you some shading so that your highlights can be less. Because we don't want to highlight other than to fix our mistakes. You do not want to be highlighting this 4 times. Bam, look at that though. Looks pretty good. It's not amazing, but from, an arm's length from the tabletop, those stripes are probably 2 millimeters thick, maybe less. They're tiny, man. Then I leaned into my strengths and took a very fine brush. I do have one finer brush in my collection than this. And I used it to highlight black with that off gray to kind of get the shape of the stripes well. Still not perfect. Yeah. And then we're going to highlight the yellow manually because I just, you know me. If you've been around my channel long enough, you know how much I love edge highlighting. I mixed that cyber yellow with like a... What was it? I missed it. It's fine. I make it like a canary yellow just to give us some extreme highlights. Again, with a really, really fine brush. This is just to add contrast. If you can get these straight, then your eye's kind of going to get drawn to where they're straight. And again, you can always weather those mistakes later. I like the idea of leaning into the Bill Making Stuff Bangarang thing where all of the weapons have hazard stripes as opposed to like matching the mech body. So other details are decals. I only have 40K decals for the most part. I probably should look into getting some, but you want little things. You want like those hazard stripes, checkered patterns, little cogs and little numbers, little hazard markings and little warning signs. You can even cut off the little text that they use on like these sheets because the entire sheet is transferable. I could put that little component code on the ass cheek of my mech and honestly it'd be pretty cool. I'm not there's better ways to do decals. Don't follow my moves here, but you essentially want to lay them down and then seal them with something. If you want like a really high detailed thing on doing decals, I could find a link. I'll probably forget to throw it up, but ideally you want something called microsol or microset. Man, look at me spitting tutorials. It's crazy. It's crazy, folks. Now the third way of adding little details is going to be what's called masking. Now, if you want to watch me make a mistake, watch me do some masking. If you don't, skip ahead. That's probably a good move. I took regular painter's tape. They do make model painter's tape. I don't know how necessary it is. The tackiness is pretty similar. The model stuff just comes tinier. Now, what I did is I'm going to do 2 little stripes on the front of this guy. The mistake I made, and I want to stress this, you should always, and the reason I didn't do this is because I already got a really nice gradient in the red, but I should have done a base coat of red before doing this sponging of this white on. And maybe model painter's tape is less tacky or easier to get off. I don't know. But gosh, it looks real bad, doesn't it? The one thing I am best at is fixing mistakes. First off, if that's the vibe you're going for, if this was like a more industrial or like, you know, broken robot, probably would look pretty cool to have these really broken, stripes. I just fixed it by hand. Yeah, because I had to. So look up masking on models. It can look way better than this, I promise. Now I need to stop and take 1 second to show you how high quality these minis are, even compared to the Battletech minis. Now the Battletech minis aren't perfect. I love them. I mean, I bought this here Atlas just because everyone's got to have an Atlas, and I painted him up, and he looks phenomenal. I might stick a picture of him. I don't know. But these guys look great. The big thing I don't do on Battletech minis that I'm going to do here to add some realism is do a lot of weathering. Now for weathering, you typically need 3 things. You need dirt, you need metal, you need rust. And you probably need some tool to put them on your model. So paintbrush, or I'm going to use these little guys. Oh, and you need a sponge if you're going to do this technique. This is like an actual sea sponge. I don't think it was like a real life sea sponge. I'm assuming it's like a synthetic sea sponge. If not, I hope this sponge lived a good life. But we're going to tear off a little piece of that sponge. And I'm doing this on white because it shows weathering well. If you hate painting white armor, paint a model gray, highlight it, and then weather the crap out of it. So typically I'm going to sponge the initial color, like the highlight color I do, so the white, and then we're going to do dirt sponged right on top of that. Remember to rotate your sponge around so that it doesn't, come across as too uniform, because your mammal brain that seeks patterns really wants to make patterns too. Then it's important to take some metal and go in on the more extreme highlights of that. That's where this mech has actually been like scuffed down to his like under armor, or under armor, sure, whatever. But yeah, that's where they've been scuffed. And then again on white, anything shows up well on white. So we're gonna throw on some rust. I don't think most mechs should be in the field if they're rusty, but maybe this dude's been on a long deployment or it's raining, I don't know, geez. I don't think Battletech models should be rusty because you kind of maintain them, and if you've played the Battletech game, you know you have to repair them bitches every single time. But I just apply a few layers of rust on here and let them dry in super fast motion. This, I don't know, this is probably like 10 minutes of drying. This rust paint is like designed to do that. This is the pre-Fanatics rust, so I'm assuming the newer one is even better than this. But man, those orange on white armor, great contrast boost. Now this is something you might want to wait till you're done basing to do, but you're going to get a much stiffer makeup brush. This is probably the best thing in my collection. And something that's colored dirt that's not in a dried out Games Workshop pot. I have to throw shots every single video. I'm contractually obligated to. Instead, we're going to pull out Caramel Brown from Pro Acryl. This is actually meant to be used to do some non-metal metallic gold, like Flameon. I always want to say Flameon. It's Flame On Miniatures, but it looks like Flameon. He's got a signature set. Again, I'm not sponsored. Just a fucking insane painter. Bleep that. But I'm going to use it for dirt. Much different than non-metallic metal gold. Just jab the crap out of it. So jab the crap out of his legs.
Jab, 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 jab.
Now, normally you want to do this with a base on because it can tie the dust in, but you'll see why I don't do that later. This is great for doing really, not subtle, because we're going to build up a lot of dust, but to make sure you don't put too much on too fast. This is like an insanely light dry brush that I just do a lot aggressively. Gives us a nice dusting on his foot. Brings the visuals from the model to the head where it's brighter. Every technique I've used in this video is on this Gaslands car. Watch that video if you haven't. Again, one of my favorites. Finally, we're going to do the part that I'm most proud of on this build. That's basing. First things first, we need to liberate these guys from their super glue prisons. Then we're going to stock up on supplies. For this, you're going to need some corkboard, some granny grating, and some EVA foam, plus a few other bits and bobs you might have in your collection, different than what I have in my collection. The steel bases are pretty rad. They have 4 little notches to tell you the facing of the model, which is actually going to be perfect for Bangarang, weirdly. I took some cereal box, like card stock, like really, really cheap stuff from a pizza box or something, and I traced the outline of the base and then glued that down with some super glue. I'm sure there's better glues I could have done this with, but I am going to coat the whole thing later to really seal it down. And then I do the remainder of the base in corkboard. Same thing, glue that down. Then I grab a bunch of bits. Before I did this, I went and grabbed a bunch of MDF bits. My wife builds a lot of little model kits, so I'm blessed with a bunch of old MDF like scraps, which are perfect for this kind of stuff. We're gonna be building little roads. So I just kind of grab little bits and pieces that I think look like roads. So these little strips to separate the corkboard. We do a few little decorative embellishments, like this is a plant. I don't know if your city has plants on the street corners. I don't think mine typically does, but I guess it's out there. I know this is just like some, you can find this kind of grass and stuff anywhere. It's literally a bead and a piece of grass, and then a thing to look like a sewer grate. If you see, I did roads in kind of different patterns to really break that up, and then I just had the most fun in the world building little details. I took these little squares and built just a stack of boxes, because why wouldn't there be a stack of boxes in a giant mech war zone? This was possibly my favorite detail. Actually, I'm going to say that about all these. All these were my favorite details. MDF is interesting because it bonds the super glue immediately, and you can never separate it, so be careful. This one I put like, I think it's like a garbage can, maybe like a thing that's like, this is where you wait for the bus, and then this is like another, I don't know, like a sewer grate. Now, with a sewer grate in scale, the sewer grate is like 6 feet high. Does that make sense? Absolutely not, but that's okay. It's gonna look good on the table. Then I seal everything because some of this is paper and this is wood. We don't want things expanding or breaking. I seal everything with some Mod Podge mixed with black paint. Mod Podge is really great if you can get over how stinky it is. But I just slather this on, and then I actually take a little sponge, and on the roads I kind of dab at it so that you don't see my brush strokes. That way we can also get like a bit of texture going on in the Mod Podge. It's gonna like flatten by the time it dries, but man, those look pretty cool, right? I don't know, man. I had a lot of fun making these. These are my favorite part of this build. I primed them all black, and I thought, you know, this was working. I was like, holy crap, I thought this was never gonna work. I was very impressed with myself. Then I do a dry brush of like a dark gray on everything. And then we have to separate our sidewalk from our roads. The roads are obviously darker than sidewalks. And if your sidewalk is this cracked, I'm so sorry you live in a city that doesn't use your taxes correctly. And then I threw on a few metallics, just like some visual interest. So all of the grates got nice like copper color. Painted all of these like, just some browns. Painted the plants. Just went in and added little details. This was the easiest thing in the world. I think I did like a layer of highlights. And then I forgot what city streets look like. So I started drawing a segmented yellow line, which is not how roads work because the yellow line should be solid. So instead, I painted over everything after I did it once. Now, again, I'm not good at making straight lines, so I just kind of weathered the crap out of them with some sponging of dark colors, did a dry brush over everything, and then washed everything to really tie it together. Make it dark and dingy. I don't want these to distract from the model. I want them to like add some accent. I fixed the roads because those lines were looking not great, and I really took my time with them. And like I said, I love these. I think these are super rad. Crosswalk is pretty cool. I do hope this gives you an idea of something cool to make because I thought these came out great. But you tell me. Anyway, now that our roads are done, that means I could slap these together, and I was left with this. And as always, if you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. Bit different one. I went with like a tutorial today because I felt like I kind of knew what I'm talking about. I painted a lot of mechs so far, and I've enjoyed the process. These are some of my favorites. They're not perfect, but I think at arm's length, they're gonna look great. For those of you who pay attention to my life, which would be kind of weird, this is an old video from before I moved. So this space is gone. RIP, I'm gonna miss it. I'll have a new hobby desk that will probably get built up in mid-November, if not later than that, unfortunately. But that's fine, such is life. I promise, the Orktober video is coming out next. I've finished everything today of like recording it, other than the final fun shots. And I'm gonna get it out for Orktober because it's a Blood Bowl, Orc team, custom terrain, custom gobos, 3D printing, kit bashing, scratch building. It's a whole thing. It's a big Orktober thing. Enjoy it. Other than that, as always, I've been Chris. I like to paint things. You guys are great if you made it this far. Have a great day. Take it easy. Bye.